हमारे व्यापार में 60% की वृद्धि हुई और इस साल के पहली तिमाही के लिए 10% की वृद्धि। हम अंतर्राष्ट्रीय मंच पर अंतर्राष्ट्रीय संगठनों में हमारे सहयोग बहुत घनिष्ठ है।
И прежде всего на площадке ООН, в таких объединениях, как ШОС и БРИКС.
मैं सबसे पहले United Nations, BRICS और SCO की बात कर रहा हूँ।
У нас была возможность вчера неформально, но практически поговорить по всем вопросам.
कल अनौपचारिक माहौल में हमको बहुत मामलों पर चर्चा करने का मौका मिला। जो बहुत संवेदनशील मामले होते हैं, जो ध्यान जो रहते हैं, तो मैं इसके लिए आपका बहुत आभारी हूँ।
В том числе пытайтесь найти какие-то пути к решению и правительству кризиса. И, конечно, прежде всего миру.
जो यूक्रेन संकट का हाल निकालने के लिए जो आप कोशिश करते हैं, इसलिए आपका बहुत आभारी हूँ।
Уважаемый господин премьер-министр, мы будем рады видеть вас в Казани осенью этого года на саммите.
आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री जी, हमको उम्मीद है कि आप ब्रिक्स शिखर सम्मेलन में जो अक्टूबर में कजान शहर में होने वाला है, आपका स्वागत करने हम आशीर्वाद हैं।
И в завершение
В деле развития Индии, индийского государства.
भारत के विकास में मैं आपको हार्दिक शुभकामनाएं देना चाहता हूँ।
Мы с вами знакомы давно, я знаю, что вся ваша жизнь посвящена идее реализации, идее укрепления индийского государства и улучшения жизни индийского народа.
हम एक दूसरे को बहुत सालों से एक दूसरे को जानते हैं। मैं अच्छी तरह जानता हूँ कि आपका जीवन भारत के विकास को समर्पित है।
Позвольте пожелать вам успеха.
मैं फिर से आपको हर एक सफलता की कामना करता हूँ।
एक्सेलेंसी और मेरे मित्र, मैं आपका इस भव्य स्वागत के लिए, सम्मान के लिए हृदय से बहुत बहुत आभार व्यक्त करता हूँ। चुनाव में अभूतपूर्व विजय भारत में हमें मिला और उसके बाद आपने जो शुभकामनाएं दी उसके लिए भी मैं आपका बहुत बहुत आभार व्यक्त करता हूं। मार्च महीने में आपका भी चुनाव में भव्य विजय हुआ। मेरी तरफ से फिर से एक बार आपको बहुत बहुत शुभकामनाएं।
Ваше превосходительство, мой дорогой друг, позвольте поблагодарить вас за радушное гостеприимство, за уважение. Хотел бы вас также поблагодарить за ваши дружеские слова и ваши пожелания по поводу беспрецедентных успехов в недавних выборах в Индии. В марте в России были президентские выборы. Я хотел бы вас еще раз поздравить с вашей блестящей победой.
एक्सेलेंसी पिछले 40-50 साल से भारत आतंकवाद को झेल रहा है। आतंकवाद कितना भयानक होता है, कितना घिनौना होता है, तो हम 40 साल से भुगत रहे थे। ऐसे में जब मॉस्को में आतंकवादी घटनाएं घटी, दोगेस्तान में आतंकवाद की घटनाएं घटी, उसका दर्द कितना गहरा होगा इसकी मैं कल्पना करता हूं और मैं हर प्रकार के आतंकवाद की घोर निंदा करता हूं।
Ваше превосходительство, в течение последних 40-50 лет Индия терпит терроризм и страдает от терроризма. Насколько он страшен, мы это ощущаем на себя. В такое время произошли террористические акты в Москве и затем в Дагестане. Поэтому я могу себе представить, какую боль вы ощущаете после этих террористических актов, и поэтому мы решительно осуждаем все виды терроризма.
एक्सेलेंसी लगभग 2.5 दशक से मेरा रूस के साथ नाता जुड़ा है। आपके साथ भी करीब 2.5 दशक से मेरा नाता जुड़ा है। हम करीब 10 वर्षों में 17 बार मिले और पिछले 25 साल में हमारी बायलैटरल मीटिंग मेरी 22 हुई, यानी ये अपने आप में, और जो ये मेरी मॉस्को की 6ठी यात्रा है रशिया की, तो ये अपने आप में हमारे संबंधों की गहराई दिखाता है।
Ваше превосходительство, у меня глубокие связи с Россией и лично с вами в течение последних 2,5 десятилетий. И мы с вами встретились 17 раз в течение последних 10 лет. Это мой 6-й по счету визит в Россию, и мы сегодня участвуем в 22-м двустороннем саммите. И вот все это говорит о глубине наших отношений, нашего тесного сотрудничества.
और मैं बिना
Говорит о глубине наших отношений, нашего тесного сотрудничества.
और मैं ये बिना संकोच कह सकता हूं कि इन 25 साल की हमारी इस गहन यात्रा के मुख्य सूत्रधार आप रहे हैं, और मैं आपको विश्वास दिलाता हूं कि, और पिछले अनुभव से मैं कह सकता हूं कि आने वाला भी हमारा कार्यकाल हमारे संबंधों को और गहरा बनाएगा और घनिष्ठ बनाएगा, और हम नए नए अचीवमेंट को लेकर के आगे बढ़ेंगे।
Я могу с уверенностью сказать, и опираясь на наш прошлый опыт, что мы вместе будем работать и в будущем, будем укреплять наше сотрудничество и углублять все аспекты нашего сотрудничества, и мы будем достигать новых целей.
गत 5 वर्ष पूरे विश्व के लिए, पूरी मानव जाति के लिए बहुत ही चिंताजनक रहे, चुनौतीपूर्ण रहे, और अनेक संकटों से गुजरना पड़ा। पहले कोविड के कारण और बाद में संघर्ष और तनावों का कालखंड अलग अलग भूभाग में, इसने मानव जाति के लिए बहुत संकट पैदा किए, तनाव रहा, संघर्ष रहा, और ऐसी स्थिति में भी भारत रूस मित्रता के कारण जब दुनिया फूड, फ्यूल एंड फर्टिलाइजर के संकट से गुजर रही थी, हमारी मित्रता और हमारे सहयोग के कारण मैं मेरे देश के किसानों को फर्टिलाइजर में मुसीबत में नहीं आने दिया। फर्टिलाइजर की उनकी जो आवश्यकता है उसकी पूरी करने में हम सफल रहे, और उसमें हमारी मित्रता का भी बहुत बड़ा रोल है, और किसानों के हितों की रक्षा के लिए हम कमिटेड हैं। आने वाले भी दिनों में किसानों के हितों के लिए हम चाहेंगे कि रशिया के साथ हमारा सहयोग और अधिक बढ़ता रहे।
Ваше превосходительство, последние 5 лет для всего мира, для всех стран мира были весьма сложными, были разные конфликты, были разные кризисы. Сначала ковид создавал трудности для всего мира и человечества, затем пришли разные конфликты, разные разногласия, и поэтому человечество оказалось в таком трудном положении. И в такое время, благодаря индийско-российской дружбе, когда мир сталкивался с разными кризисами в сфере продовольственной безопасности, в сфере топлива, в сфере удобрений, именно благодаря нашей с вами дружбе мы избежали всех трудностей для индийских фермеров. И мы удовлетворили все их потребности в удобрении. И в этом особая роль нашей с вами дружбы. И мы полностью привержены защищать интересы индийских фермеров, благодаря и используя наше с вами сотрудничество, мы будем и дальше работать в этом направлении и будем только укреплять наше сотрудничество.
एक्सेलेंसी, फ्यूल्स की चुनौती भी पूरे विश्व के सामने बहुत बड़ी गहरी थी। ऐसे समय आपके सहयोग के कारण भारत में हम सामान्य नागरिक को पेट्रोल, डीजल की आवश्यकताओं में कठिनाइयों से हम बचा पाए। इतना ही नहीं, विश्व को ये बात स्वीकार करनी होगी कि भारत और रूस का फ्यूल के संबंध में जो एग्रीमेंट रहा, उसने दुनिया को भी एक प्रकार से मार्केट में स्टेबिलिटी देने का इनडायरेक्टली बहुत बड़ा काम किया है।
Весь мир сталкивается с кризисом в сфере топлива и энергии, но благодаря нашему сотрудничеству мы смогли избежать всяких трудностей для простых граждан Индии. Мы обеспечивали бензином, дизельным топливом и так далее. Поэтому весь мир должен признать, что благодаря индийско-российскому сотрудничеству в сфере энергетики мы обеспечивали стабильность на мировом рынке.
दुनिया के अनेक देशों के नागरिकों को पेट्रोल डीजल के कारण बहुत बड़े संकट से गुजरना पड़ा और आज भी गुजरना पड़ रहा है, लेकिन हमारे उस कारोबार के कारण हम भारत के नागरिकों को पेट्रोल डीजल के इस मार से बचा पाए, इन्फ्लेशन से बचा पाए और स्टेबिलिटी भी ला पाए. इसके लिए भी मैं आपका आभार व्यक्त करता हूं.
Во многих странах мира люди сталкиваются с проблемами с топливом, будто бензин, дизель, но благодаря нашим с вами договоренностям в этой сфере, в сфере энергетики, мы могли обеспечить наших граждан этим топливом, и не только обеспечили, мы могли держать инфляцию под контролем и также обеспечили стабильность. За это я вам весьма признателен.
एक मित्र के रूप में आपने अनेक फोरम में पब्लिकली भारत का जो मेक इन इंडिया इनिशिएटिव है उसकी भरपूर तारीफ की, और तारीफ की ही कितना नहीं, आपने भारत में मैन्युफैक्चरिंग की दिशा में कदम उठाए और भारत के मैन्युफैक्चरिंग में आपकी भागीदारी के कारण भारत के नौजवानों के लिए रोजगार के अनेक नए अवसर बने हैं और उसके लिए अनेक क्षेत्रों में विकास के भी एक नए आयाम जुड़े हैं. और मैं मानता हूं कि मैन्युफैक्चरिंग के क्षेत्र में आने वाले दिनों में, क्योंकि उसके परिणाम बहुत अच्छे मिल रहे हैं, और मजबूती मिलेगी ऐसा मुझे लगता है.
В качестве друга Индии на разных форумах вы хвалите нашу компанию, нашу программу «Делая в Индии». И не только хвалите, вы предпринимаете конкретные шаги в этом направлении. И благодаря нашему партнерству индийская молодежь получает новые возможности, создаются новые рабочие места для них. Поэтому мы видим очень большие перспективы для развития нашего сотрудничества и тем самым развития нашей страны. И я полностью уверен, что в сфере производства нас ждет очень хорошие перспективы в будущем, и мы уже видим результаты, и мы продолжим работу в этом направлении.
एक्सेलेंसी, वैसे तो हमारा ये जो द्विपक्षीय वार्ता का कार्यक्रम 25 साल से चल रहा है, 22 बार हम मिल चुके हैं, लेकिन शायद ये मीटिंग ऐसी है कि पूरे विश्व का ध्यान मेरी इस यात्रा पर केंद्रित हुआ है और पूरी विश्व इस यात्रा के भांति-भांति के मीनिंग निकाल रहा है.
Ваше превосходительство, хочу сказать, что мы друг с другом связаны уже 25 лет, и мы проводим 22-й по счету двусторонний саммит, но фокус мирового сообщества фокусом является вот мой нынешний визит. Весь мир смотрит на это с большим интересом.
कल आपने मुझे अपने निवास स्थान पर बुलाया और एक सच्चे दोस्त के रूप में कल शाम हमने करीब 4-5 घंटे तक साथ रहे, अनेक विषयों पर हमने बातें की और मुझे खुशी हुई कि यूक्रेन के विषय में हम दोनों अपने अपने विचार खुले मन से, विस्तार से हम उसकी चर्चा कर पाए और बड़े आदर के साथ एक दूसरे के विचारों को हमने सुनने समझने का प्रयास किया.
И весь мир дает свое значение этому визиту, как они считают правильно. И вчера в вашей резиденции у нас была прекрасная возможность проводить 4 или 5 часов. Мы в домашней обстановке обсуждали все вопросы. И я очень рад, что и по тематике Украины мы обменивались мнениями в открытом ключе, друг друга с уважением относились к мнению друг друга, и мы спокойно разговаривали.
आपने देखा होगा कि G20 में भारत G20 की सफलता के साथ साथ ग्लोबल साउथ की आवाज बनकर के मक्कमतापूर्वक अपनी बातें रखता रहा है और उसके कारण स्वाभाविक रूप से आज ग्लोबल साउथ की दुनिया में शांति की जो आकांक्षा है, अपेक्षा है, उसको भी मैंने भली भांति कल आपके सामने प्रस्तुत किया था।
Ваше превосходительство, вы видели в ходе нашего председательства в Большой Двадцатке, Индия предоставила всему мировому сообществу голос стран глобального юга. И вчера в ходе наших разговоров у меня была возможность и представить эти вопросы, связанные с странами глобального юга, вам.
एक्सेलेंसी, युद्ध हो, संघर्ष हो, आतंकवादी हमले हो, मानवता में विश्वास करने वाला हर व्यक्ति जब जानहानि होती है तब बहुत पीड़ित होता है। लेकिन उसमें भी जब मासूम बच्चों की कत्ल होती है, मासूम बच्चों को मरते हुए देखते हैं, तब हृदय छलनी हो जाता है और वो दर्द बहुत भयानक होता है। और इस विषय में भी आपसे विस्तार से चर्चा हुई है।
Ваше превосходительство, возьмем войну или какой-либо конфликт, или террористические акты. Любой верующий в человечество человек ощущает боль, когда умирают люди. И особенно, когда умирают ни в чем не винные дети. Когда мы ощущаем такую боль, то сердце просто взрывается. И я имел возможность поговорить об этих вопросах с вами вчера.
एक्सेलेंसी, एक मित्र के नाते मैंने हमेशा कहा है कि हमारी भावी पीढ़ी के उज्जवल भविष्य के लिए शांति सर्वाधिक आवश्यक है। लेकिन मैं ये भी जानता हूं कि युद्ध के मैदान में समाधान संभव नहीं होते। बम, बंदूक और गोलियों के बीच समाधान और शांति वार्ताएं सफल नहीं होती हैं और हमने वार्ता के माध्यम से ही शांति के रास्ते अपनाने होंगे।
В качестве вашего друга я вам всегда говорю, что для светлого будущего наших будущих поколений мир обязателен. Поэтому мы считаем, что война не решение. Решение не может быть посредством войны. Бомбы, ракеты и винтовки не могут обеспечивать мир. Поэтому мы делаем акцент на диалог, и диалог необходим.
एक्सेलेंसी, मुझे इस बात का संतोष है कि कल इतने खुले मन से आप बात कर रहे थे। कोई लीपापोती नहीं थी, कोई कर्टेन नहीं था। और मैंने देखा कि हमारी बातचीत में से बहुत सारे इंटरेस्टिंग आइडिया निकले। एक नई सोच मैं महसूस कर रहा हूं और नई सोच सामने आई है।
Ваше превосходительство, я очень рад, что вчера мы так неформально разговаривали, и вы очень открыто рассказывали ваше мнение без каких-либо окрасок. И в наших переговорах, из наших переговоров возникли очень интересные идеи и совершенно новые взгляды.
एक्सेलेंसी, कल हमारी बात में ये भी हमारा मन बना था और शांति की बहाली में भारत हर संभव सहयोग करने के लिए तैयार है। और आपका भी सानुकूल विचार सुनकर के मुझे बहुत खुशी हुई और मैं भी आपको भी आश्वस्त करता हूं और विश्व समुदाय को भी आश्वस्त करता हूं कि भारत शांति के पक्ष में है और शांति के लिए मेरे मित्र राष्ट्रपति पुतिन की कल बातों को सुनकर के मेरे मन में एक आशा पैदा हुई है और मैं इसके लिए आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद करता हूं और मीडिया जगत के मित्रों को भी मैं कहूंगा, спасибо.
Ваше превосходительство, вчера мы также согласились на том, чтобы скорейшим образом установить мир, и мы готовы к любому содействию в этом деле. Я услышал вашу позицию, ваши позитивные взгляды и мышления, и могу вас заверить, что Индия всегда была на стороне мира, и когда я вас слышал, я чувствовал оптимизм
возникли надежды на будущее. Поэтому хочу вас за это поблагодарить и также хотел бы сказать друзьям из СМИ большое спасибо.
Спасибо.
So there you heard India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi laying out his vision for India-Russia talks and his vision for world peace in that restricted meeting with President Vladimir Putin of Russia. Shubhendu, just to recap for the benefit of viewers joining us, he did speak about a lot of issues concerning both India and Russia and the world at large. If I can just walk our viewers through the big takeaways from the Prime Minister's speech there, Shubhendu, he said that India hosted G20 last year, and as a member of the Global South, he said that the Global South is yearning for peace, and that he noted how the killings of women and children does not augur well for world peace in the context of what is happening in various parts of the world. And he said that peace is important. At the same time, India understands where Russia is coming from, and that resolution of the Russia-Ukraine conflict in particular, Shubhendu, cannot happen on the battlefield. And he says that no talks can happen when bombs fly. And he also said that they had free and candid exchanges in their meeting yesterday in Moscow, and that they exchanged quote-unquote interesting ideas, and that a new thinking has come to the fore, and that India, he says, will do its utmost for world peace at the same time.
Absolutely, Ramesh. And key takeaway that the Ukraine conflict has featured prominently in the conversation between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Vladimir Putin. In fact, Prime Minister mentioned that the conversation went on for about 4 to 5 hours, and the leaders could speak frankly about their ideas and the manner in which this conflict could be resolved. And Prime Minister Modi, in no uncertain terms, said that India is on the side of peace and it's important for the generations to come. Also, Ramesh, it's important that Prime Minister begins his intervention talking about the issue of terrorism. And he says that when Moscow and Russia comes under terror attack, India understands what kind of a setback that means. India has been jostling with that challenge for years. And he also spoke about the development partnership, whether it's fuel, fertilizer and food, the manner in which India-Russia partnership has helped tide many challenges in the recent past.
Absolutely. Very interesting comments there, Shubhendu, from India's Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, in that restricted talks with President Vladimir Putin of Russia. Remember, it's day 2 of his ongoing visit to Russia, the first in his third term in office, and the first bilateral visit that Russia is hosting after President Putin was inaugurated for the second time a few months ago. Shubhendu, joining us is Mr. Atul Aneja. He's a senior editor of India Narrative, a web portal headquartered in New Delhi. But he joins us from the northern Indian city of Shimla. Mr. Aneja, welcome to DD India News Hour on this special broadcast as part of Prime Minister Modi's ongoing visit to Russia. We just listened to Prime Minister Modi's opening remarks. Very, very interesting, some would say, the breadth of topics that he covered in that intervention. What did you make of it?
Absolutely, Ramesh. The sweep of it was outstanding. And in fact, it was not just a conversation which talked about the bilateral issues, but there was a global, in fact, a global South versus global appeal element to it. And I think the takeoff of this conversation really can be traced to the G20, where India did its best or came out as one of the spokesperson, or let's say the leader, quote unquote, of the global South. So Prime Minister Modi was not talking about India and Russia. His sweep was global. He was in a way talking in the framework of global South versus wars and the need for peace in the global South and the expectation of peace in that. So the framework was very, very broad. In that context, of course, it was the Ukraine war came in. And his remarks on the Ukraine war were also very nuanced. It was not trying to pick one against the other.
Right.
Because it showed an understanding that there was a conflict, there was a need for peace, but it can't be done by one party alone. There has to be a cessation of violence first. It can't be settled on the battlefield, which applies to both. It's not just Russia, but the Ukrainian side as well. So very, very balanced on Ukraine. And I think, Ramesh, the point you made about very interesting ideas came out of that interaction of 4 to 5 hours. I find that really catchy because, I'm sure there were new ideas which have come up in terms of resolution, not only of this conflict, but other issues related to the global south and the globe. So it's a very forward-looking conversation which took place, with a very wide framework and sweep.
Right. Mr. Aneja, Shubhendu here. Now, we also have to see the timing of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Russia. On the other hemisphere, there is a NATO conference taking place with a focus on the Ukraine conflict, much about empowering Ukraine to continue in this conflict. And here, Prime Minister speaks about how India is on the side of peace and how resolutions cannot be found on the battlefield. All eyes were on the manner in which Prime Minister intervenes, but the message has gone across loud.
Yeah, Shubhendu, it again brings me back to the G20, where we said and declared that we are a bridge between the global north and the global south, east and the west. So it's really a takeoff from there when he talks about when Prime Minister talks about that the world is watching us. Of course, so this dialogue is taking place in the broader context which you referred to, that there's a NATO summit which is going on. And so whatever conversation takes place has a much wider impact. And I could see President Putin smiling and nodding his head when Prime Minister made these remarks. So it's obvious that this is taking place at a very sensitive time, and whatever is being said over here is not just between India and Russia, but the world is hearing.
Mr. Aneja, you referred to how Prime Minister Modi spoke about quote-unquote interesting ideas, and that how a quote-unquote new thinking has come to the fore in his talks with President Putin over the last several hours in Moscow. In that context, I want to set it up for our viewers as well. You referred to how the Prime Minister spoke about his idea of resolving various conflicts, including Ukraine-Russia conflict, and that how this resolution cannot happen on the battlefield. He also said when he met with President Putin a few years ago in Uzbekistan that this is not an era of war. At the same time, a few hours ago, in his address to the Indian diaspora in Moscow, he said, the world needs confluence more than influence, and who better than India to deliver on it? Now, I'm just thinking aloud here, what is he playing at or playing for?
Ramesh, the operative word is confluence. That how do we get various antagonists together on some common platform? And that is where India is coming from. And to do that confluence, you need to explore ideas. You need to talk. You see, this whole idea of isolating Russia and not talking to them. We had this conference in Switzerland on Ukraine. There was no Russia present over there. So Prime Minister Modi is saying that you got to talk, and he engaged with President Putin for 4 to 5 hours. That unless you have this dialogue, intensive dialogue. He also met Zelensky of Ukraine at the G7 summit. So India is here, is first of all opening out a very broad dialogue on Ukraine and trying to seek out confluence, which came out the operative word here, that where do we can bridge these divides, which again is a throwback to the declaration or the sentiment expressed at the G20, the bridge builder. I think over here we are seeing this role of India as a bridge builder. In this conversation which we just heard, Ramesh, I think that came out very, very clearly. Global South comes in, Ukraine, Russia, world is watching. So confluence. So all this is taking place under the common theme, which is India now wants to position itself as the bridge builder of the world and is committed to peace for its own self, for its own development, which is the real focus.
Right, Mr. Aneja, you mentioned Global South. Prime Minister also refers to the G20 presidency and priorities of the Global South. Now, the reference to Global South amidst talking about the conflict and peaceful resolution becomes important. A message that the conflict is usually not between just two countries. The impact is on the entire world, especially for developing countries, for partners of the Global South.
Absolutely, Shubhendu. Now look at it. Why the Global South has its stakes in the conflict in Ukraine and Russia. Black Sea area is one of the food baskets of the world. Any conflict or the continuation of the conflict means a crisis in global food security. Who gets hit hardest when there is global food insecurity? It's the Global South. So Global South has a stake in a very urgent resolution of this conflict. Second point, energy security. This is the area which is, which is Russia especially, and including Ukraine, but Russia really, and take the Siberian side of it, has all the reserves, has the largest reserves of oil in the world. And so Global South, for its own energy security, Prime Minister mentioned about India, that how Russia helped to keep the petrol and diesel prices contained in India. I think that applies to the entire globe. So therefore, the Global South has a stake in stopping this war on several axes. But to me, most immediately which comes to mind is food security and energy security. There will be others as well, but I think these are two vital and uppermost to my mind.
Indeed, Mr. Aneja, we've spoken about the global implications of the summit that's taking place as we speak between India and Russia. Let's zoom in on the bilateral aspects of the relationship. Do you think this reinforces or reiterates India's emphasis and reliance on strategic autonomy? What do you make of the timing of this visit, number one? And number two, the optics and possible outcomes towards the end of their delegation level talks?
You stole the words out of my mouth, because I was always, while you were asking this question, that this is a real exercise of strategic autonomy. That, you are not looking over your shoulder to see how the rest of the world is going to perceive you, but you're going whole hog to develop what the Prime Minister said, a new phase in the relationship, that our relationship after this meeting will go deeper and stronger. So complete exercise of strategic autonomy. Then we come to areas like energy, where, the Prime Minister, of course, went at length over there. And Ramesh, if you look at it at the occasion of addressing the diaspora, the Prime Minister talked of this new corridor, that is, or at least highlighting the new corridor of Vladivostok to Chennai, the maritime corridor. He also spoke about the need for South Corridor. So he's not hedging. We know that people don't want, that there are forces in the world which don't want an engagement with Russia. They want to isolate Russia and impoverish Russia.
I'm afraid we're having some interruption there with the audio link with Mr. Aneja. We'll try to reconnect with him in just a bit. But if you're just joining us, viewers, we are getting to you the latest from Moscow on the delegation level talks that are taking place as we speak between the leaders of India and Russia. The two leaders have just met for a restricted meeting, and we've heard Prime Minister Modi speak about his vision, his roadmap for India-Russia ties in the bilateral as well as in the global context as well.
Absolutely. Those visuals were showing of Prime Minister's engagements through today. Just a short while ago, Prime Minister and President Vladimir Putin presented their opening remarks. These visuals, however, of Prime Minister laying wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier, paying his respects. Prime Minister Narendra Modi on a two-day visit to Russia. Today is day 2. Those are visuals of the earlier engagement of the day. Soldiers killed in World War II. It's a war memorial dedicated to them. Prime Minister Narendra Modi earlier today paying his respects. Sacrifice and indomitable human courage. The war memorial is dedicated to soldiers who laid down their lives in World War II.
Now, after laying a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier in Moscow, India's Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, visited an exhibition along with Russia's President Vladimir Putin.
The exhibition, largest and most up-to-date display in Russia dedicated to nuclear energy, highlights the achievements of erstwhile Soviet Union in nuclear energy. Prime Minister Modi witnessed the advancements in Russia's nuclear technology and cooperation between India and Russia in peaceful uses of the atom.
Now, India-Russia ties in nuclear energy is time-tested. It includes the Kudamkulam nuclear power plants, India's largest nuclear power plant, and the flagship project of Russia-India technology and energy cooperation. Now, India was one of the first countries to realize the prospects of the peaceful uses of the atom. The Atomic Energy Commission of India was established way back in 1948.
And during his visit, Prime Minister Narendra Modi also met Indian students studying at the Atom Center in the fields of medicine and science.
All right, apologies for that, viewers, for the interruption with our guest, Mr. Atul Aneja, who is joining us from the northern Indian city of Shimla. Mr. Aneja, I hope you are back with us and can hear us loud and clear. Please finish making a point. You were talking about India's reliance or emphasis on strategic autonomy.
That's right, Ramesh. So you have here a very positive engagement with Russia, a sentiment that we are going to take this forward. And what does it follow? It follows the Prime Minister's visit to Italy for the G7. So you are here, you are engaging with the West, G7 predominantly being West, and, you are not taking G7 positions without your own, outlook on it. And then you are here in Russia and you are engaging wholeheartedly with Russia. I think that's the beauty of it, that we have this strategic autonomy, and India, in fact, Prime Minister also during his visit has spoken about that this is also a multipolar world, and which is interesting that, India is one of the major poles of this world, and this important pole will engage with everyone. We are not here to play narrow geopolitics here. We are here, we are interest driven, but we are also global in our outlook, but we also recognize that this is a multipolar world. And in a multipolar world, India's salience is really by exercising its strategic autonomy and being a bridge builder with the East and the West and the North and the South.
Right, Mr. Aneja, also how do you read into the degree of comfort that the two leaders share? Prime Minister in his intervention speaks about how difficult themes like the conflict were discussed with utmost respect and comfort with one another. He mentioned the leaders have met 17 times in 10 years. There were some concerns about the gap between the 21st and the 22nd annual dialogue, but it was for everyone to see the kind of rapport that the two leaders have.
Shubhendu, absolutely. This is amazing personal chemistry between the two. And if I recall, it took place somewhere around 2018 or so. It was probably Sochi when Prime Minister had visited, and what I was told by people in Moscow was that that conversation went on till early morning, from late evening, and that was the foundation of this personal chemistry, and that's been going on ever since. Whether it was the Eastern Asia Summit, or you could see it today. So that's a very, very important factor in holding the India-Russia relation together. You talked about the gap in the bilateral. You see, we also went through the COVID times. So, there was a reason why that did not happen. But we are back on track. So there were very pressing external factors which caused that interruption. And not because there was any dilution of this fantastic personal chemistry which we see right now on our screen.
Mr. Aneja, another aspect which has impact not only on bilateral ties but regionally as well is the issue of connectivity. Now, you referred to how Prime Minister Modi referred to Astrakhan and spoke about Mumbai-Astrakhan connectivity in light of the INSTC, the International North-South Transport Corridor. Now, there are two competing narratives. The India-West Asia-Europe mid-corridor has taken precedence, but is the International North-South Transport Corridor also very much on the table in view of the India-Russia ties insofar as Chennai-Vladivostok connectivity is concerned, and also the North-South Transport Corridor?
Absolutely, Ramesh, that you're not choosing sides here. You have IMAC, which we talked about, which is the maritime corridor to Europe, which was put during G20. But then that is predated by the International North-South Transport Corridor. So you're not you see, you got to engage Europe, you got to engage Eurasia. And for both these geographies, you need connectivity. And here you're not choosing sides. I mean, you're going ahead with both. So it's not an either or equation. It's again coming back to the basic point, because we have strategic autonomy, we'll do both. And I think that particular link with Astrakhan, and if you come on the other side of the Caspian, you have a place called Atishga, very close to Baku. And I happened to visit there some time ago. And you find a very strong Indian traders influence over there. There are sarais built over there, resting houses, which have Gurumukhi inscripted on that. So there is a layers and layers of relationship with Baku, and thereafter you cross the Caspian and you come to Astrakhan with Russia. I think, frankly, there needs to be far more research about this connect between India and the Caspian region, which is very much central to this international north-south transport corridor. So I think, and again, in the international north-south transport corridor, you get Iran into the picture. In excess of strategic autonomy. From a geo-economic and geopolitical and a geocultural perspective, Iran is central to us. But we also maintain a relationship with Israel. So again, no either or here. We have a strategic relationship with Russia. We have a strategic relationship with Iran, with the Chabahar port in Iran, and we'll go ahead with that. Because we are in a multipolar era, and we got to engage everyone so long as it promotes India's national interests, and frankly, now if it promotes the interests of the global south.
Right, Mr. Aneja, also just to understand the idea of strategic autonomy even better, India's unique impartial approach to connecting with leadership from the opposing sides. What does it also mean for the global geopolitics? We're talking about physical connectivity, but there's also an opportunity for diplomatic connectivity of the opposing side through India. How do you read the potential of that?
Yeah, I think the potential exists, because you'll have to get it's gaining momentum right now. But can we become the center of diplomatic convergence, confluence, to put what the word which Ramesh was referring? Can we do that? I think there is a scope for that. And it's coming now thick and fast. I think we need to retrain ourselves, our diplomats, etc. That there was a time when we were looking only for ourselves. There was a phase, and that was historically we were passing through that. But once again, we are back into that stage where we need to actively engage all sides. And for that, you need training, you need expansion of the diplomatic corps. I would say that would be the first priority, because our responsibilities are increasing. We got to get more acquainted with the geo-economic side of it, because this is unlike the non-aligned movement and others where we were more political. This is the time of geo-economics, of economic development of the entire global south and of India. You recall Prime Minister thanked President Putin for Russia's interest in India's Make in India scheme, a project. So, you got to get this particular capsule of being the confluence and of a peacemaker in a little different light of what you were in the 50s and the 60s, in the light of the new realities of the digital world. And you need an expansion of the diplomatic corps, fully trained. But I think history is beckoning us now to play that role. And we need to grab that opportunity if we have to climb further on the global stage, and also become in the sense, a very welcome member of the UN Security Council.
Mr. Aneja, so we've discussed about Prime Minister Modi's vision for resolution of global crises, including the Russia-Ukraine conflict. We've spoken about India's emphasis or reliance on its own strategic autonomy. We've discussed connectivity. Now, any viewer or watcher of India-Russia ties would tell you that defense, nuclear energy and space have occupied the three main pillars of the bilateral ties. But looking at trade in particular, in the light of India's energy imports from Russia, do you think there is scope for reducing the trade imbalance, number one, and number two, to promote and encourage rupee-ruble trade in local currencies?
I think the time has come for that, Ramesh. You have a $60 billion trade now. It just jumped after the Ukraine crisis. And when you have that level, then you also need, at a time when Russia is under sanctions, let's not forget real politics, you need a new approach, whether it's bilateral currencies, digital currencies. You need a new mode of exchange with which is taking place. Whether I'm worried about the imbalance, not really, but it is also time to turn trade and trade in resources into value addition, which means investment, especially on the nuclear field you mentioned about. I was recently in St. Petersburg. I also saw the strides which Russia, the Rosatom, the company,
Yes,
has done on renewable energy as well, and on AI, surprisingly. So these are new areas which are opening up, and I think that requires investments. Russia's investments in India and Indian investments in the Russian Far East, Ramesh, because that's an area which Putin
Right.
has opened up big time for further investment. And that's where the Vladivostok to Chennai corridor comes in, because it's really the outlet for the Russian Far East. There is enormous scope. Frankly, there's one more thing which I think which can happen is the acute shortage of both blue and white collar workers in Russia. And I think that's an area we have done it with UAE and with the Gulf countries. I think we need to look at that, provided we ensure the protection of our people and the interests of our people. But that's an area from the Gulf. We're getting something like $70-80 billion of remittances, and gives employment as well. I think that's one area we
all right. We have with us Atul Aneja. I think he's back. Yes.
Plenty of these new opportunities are coming up.
All right.
Yeah,
Mr. Aneja, we are also showing now
so-
visuals of Prime Minister's visit to that Rosatom exhibition center, which displays Russia's nuclear capacity, the advancements of its technology. In the larger context of energy trade, what kind of centrality do you think nuclear cooperation is likely to take in the coming days? Prime Minister also mentioned that earlier oil trade in the past couple of years helped stabilize the oil market globally. What is the potential for convergence in nuclear energy, according to you?
That India is something which is which need.
There's some
Mr.
communication.
Aneja, apologies to you. We'll try to fix that link with you in just a bit. Mr. Atul Aneja is joining us from Shimla. We'll try to reconnect with him in just a bit. But if I can, Shubhendu, bring our viewers up to speed with some more news that's coming from Moscow earlier in the day. Prime Minister Modi addressed the Indian community in Moscow. He thanked them for a warm reception. He appreciated the community for being a strong pillar of bilateral ties between India and Russia.
And Prime Minister said that India and Russia are working shoulder to shoulder to give new energy to global prosperity, and that Russia is India's trusted friend.
मुझे खुशी है कि ग्लोबल प्रॉस्पेरिटी को नई ऊर्जा देने के लिए भारत और रूस कंधे से कंधा मिलाकर चल रहे हैं। यहां मौजूद आप सभी लोग भारत और रूस के संबंधों को और नई ऊंचाई दे रहे हैं। आपने अपनी मेहनत से, अपनी ईमानदारी से रूस के समाज में अपना योगदान दिया है। साथियों, मैं दशकों से भारत और रूस के बीच जो अनोखा रिश्ता है उसका कायल रहा हूं। रूस शब्द सुनते ही हर भारतीय के मन में पहला शब्द आता है भारत के सुख दुख का साथी। भारत का भरोसेमंद दोस्त, रूस में सर्दी के मौसम में टेम्परेचर कितना ही माइनस में नीचे क्यों न चला जाए, भारत रूस की दोस्ती हमेशा प्लस में रही है, गर्मजोशी भरी रही है। ये रिश्ता म्यूचुअल ट्रस्ट और म्यूचुअल रिस्पेक्ट की मजबूत नींव पर बना है। और वो गाना तो यहां के घर घर में कभी गाया जाता था, सर पे लाल टोपी रूसी, फिर भी ये गीत भले ही पुराना हो गया हो, लेकिन सेंटिमेंट्स एवरग्रीन है।
Prime Minister Modi also announced 2 new Indian consulates at Kazan and Yekaterinburg.
कजान और युकातेरिनबुर्ग में 2 नए कॉन्सुलेट खोलने का निर्णय लिया गया है। इससे आना जाना और व्यापार कारोबार और आसान होगा। साथियों, हमारे संबंधों का एक प्रतीक अस्त्राखान का इंडिया हाउस भी है। 17वीं शताब्दी में गुजरात के व्यापारी वहां बसे थे। 2 साल पहले नॉर्थ साउथ ट्रांसपोर्ट कॉरिडोर से पहला कॉमर्शियल कंसाइनमेंट भी यहां पहुंचा। ये कॉरिडोर मुंबई और अस्त्राखान की पोर्ट सिटी को आपस में जोड़ता है। अब हम चेन्नई व्लादिवोस्तोक ईस्टर्न मैरीटाइम कॉरिडोर पर भी काम कर रहे हैं।
Those are excerpts of Prime Minister's address to the Indian diaspora earlier today. Foreign affairs expert Atul Aneja continues to be with us. So we just heard some bites of Prime Minister addressing the diaspora, and again, really focusing on the warmth of relationship between India and Russia, the people-to-people connect. How does that aspect also drive and define the relationship between India and Russia?
Shubhendu, very strongly, because when Prime Minister said, he talked about the deep history of this people-to-people contact. He talked about Astrakhan, the Gujarati traders using that from 17th century. So this is a very deep historical people-to-people connect, which needs to be revived. And to do that, these 2 particular consulates which have been opened in Ekaterinburg and in Kazan is really about these the people-to-people connection and the expansion of these people-to-people ties between India and Russia. So really, the relationship further gets upgraded with the people-to-people element coming in.
Right.
And I think what the Prime Minister may have in mind is also the greater connection of Indian states and particular provinces of Russia. That's where you add another layer. I mean, it's been done in other geographies, but I think it will be great if that particular aspect is also looked after here, of a deeper state connection with provincial connection in Russia. And I also mentioned one more thing, which was about the possibility of Indian guest workers going to Russia,
right.
Both the blue collar as well as the white collar. There's a great demand for that as well.
Indeed.
I think it also addresses some of our employment issues, if you like, and it also brings in this kind of remittances which we are getting for the Gulf, $70 to $80 billion. So I think that's one area we also might like to explore, and this particular 2 consulates in Kazan and
right.
Ekaterinburg may help in that direction also. I don't know whether that's in mind, but probably that could be an element.
Fair enough.
Which might be under discussion at some level between India and Russia.
Mr. Aneja, we have just about 4 minutes left on the end of the first hour of this broadcast. So I'll ask you very quickly. We haven't touched upon this at all. Now, and you've served and worked and lived in China. I have to ask you this. Now, President Putin has touched upon the Russia-India-China trilateral when he visited India in December 2021. Foreign Minister Lavrov spoke about it just a few days ago in Moscow. Now, given how Russia is approaching its ties with China on the one hand and the complexities of India's relations with China, do you think Russia can lean on China to modulate or moderate its behavior?
Very much a possibility. In fact, if you recall the visit of President Putin in 2019, it was a very short visit, and he was there for a few hours in Hyderabad House, and then you'll remember that. One of the elements now we know which was discussed was, can Russia in any way do something about easing tensions between India and China? And if you recall, after President Putin went back to Moscow,
I'm afraid we lost that link with Mr. Aneja, but we'll leave it there. Mr. Aneja, if you can hear us, thank you so much for joining us on this special broadcast and sharing your thoughts and insights with our viewers at home and abroad. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And we'll continue our special coverage of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Russia. It's day 2. Several important aspects are still to be covered. We're heading for a short break. We'll be right back. Stay with us.